Matthew White here to talk about Athena and StarLink. Matthew is the Manager of Operational Platforms at the RFS, leading the development and support of mission-critical technology systems that enhance frontline emergency response. He's got about 13 years of experience in operational communications across the RFS, and he brings deep expertise in public safety technology, systems integration and cross-agency coordination. He oversees key initiatives including mobile data terminals, the Vehicle as a Node program and the paging replacement project. He also led the rollout of platforms such as Activ and FireMapper. Matthew is a dedicated volunteer in the Hornsby Ku-ring-gai District, currently serving as captain. He's also the proud father of 2 kids. His favourite show on TV of all time, in fact, his only show on TV at the moment, is Bluey. If you've got any questions about Bluey, I reckon he knows everything from every episode. It is time to hear from our operational platforms white knight with the right foresight, that upright, polite and quite erudite socialite. All right, sit tight, it's Matthew White.
Right, thank you very much everyone. That was quite an introduction. So yes, Matthew White, Manager of Operational Platforms, also fondly referred to on many occasions as Chief Nerd, so that's okay as well. And today we're going to talk to you about Athena and Vehicle as a Node. As the Chief Nerd of the RFS, I am absolutely super passionate about this, so I tend to talk about it for a very long time, and sometimes I tend to talk quickly, so I trust I'm in a room of experienced firefighters here, so hand signals are key. If people start tapping their head, I'll interpret that you're a bit bored and just move on, and that would be helpful for me as well. So we'll touch on Athena first. What is Athena? So you may have heard about Athena. Athena's been described as a lot of things. It's a bushfire intelligence tool. It's showing fire predictions. It now is our common operating picture. Well, it is more than that as well. It is an intelligence tool broadly, but it brings together lots and lots and lots of information that exists inside the RFS. That's mapping layers that are already existing. That's fire predictions that are already being done by the teams, and it's putting it into a single website or a single place amongst a whole lot of automation to try and bring information to operation teams faster, more readily, more visible, more easy to interpret, to help them make reliable decisions and actually provide that information down to the field. So it's not just helping people in IMTs, it's actually helping operations officers in the state operations centre, it's helping people in the IMT and the fire control centre, and that's actually making better information more available, more readily available down to the field as well. But when you think about exactly what it is, we've got the list of the modules as you put them up there, and some of them are more interesting than others, but ultimately we'll walk you through each of them today. So we've got the risk visualiser first up, and that's what information it's providing to people when they look at that through the fire prediction. So it'll show the prediction itself. Here's where it thinks the fire is going to go, and I very strongly recommend talking to the community resilience team today. They can walk you through the science, the hows, the why that works, the different models and the information that provides. But the system takes that, maps that against the ground, and then says, how many pieces of key infrastructure are in the way of this fire. Like, where's the major power lines, where are the communities, where are the properties, and starts to raise that information to them immediately. So while you know that locally, we've got people in fire control centres now immediately being told, look, there are things that we predict this fire is going to impact, and they can start to make plans and take action from there. We've got aviation safety, so it's starting to look at weather and provide advice to that IMT around how safe is it to operate different aircraft inside that particular space, and that's ranging from large aircraft to small aircraft. It'll never tell people not to do something or to do it, but it will provide them the information they need to make the right decision along the way. Common operating picture, many of you will have seen the COP has changed. It used to be this tool that we loved and it looked a certain way. Recently we've moved that into Athena and given that newer experience, and we've actually been able to provide you more information than's been available for. You think about the fire predictions were something that you couldn't see or maybe someone had to provide to you. Well, now in the newer tool, someone in the IMT ticks, yeah, we're going to authorise that fire prediction. It immediately becomes available to you in the common operating picture that you have access to. Why is the tool important as well? What else is it doing? Well, what it's actually also doing is from the second that an incident is created, and I won't spend a lot of time here, but from the time that 000 call comes in, it hits fire rescue, it comes to us, it creates in our system, and a type of bushfire, the system immediately gets to work. It's not waiting for someone to say, hey, show me a prediction of this, or what do we need to know. The system immediately picks up that fire, goes through a process, generates a prediction, puts it on the map for people to see, starts to look at the aviation risk, starts to look at the risk response engine that we'll talk about in a moment, starts to look on X for the social media posts, are people posting photos of this, and bringing all that information together in a single place. And I keep forgetting my presentations there, so I'll stop turning around. Apologies for that. And now we've got FireMapper integration as well. So now as you're using FireMapper in the field and you're taking those photos and drawing those lines, people in the FCC or people in state can start to turn that on and see what you're sharing with them, and that's becoming immediately available to them. So you can see the theme here. The whole system is about how do we make information easier to get it from place to place. You don't have to think about it all the time. You're not sitting on the fire ground going, oh, hang on, let me just get my phone out, take a photo, send it to the duty officer so the duty officer can send it to someone else, someone else, someone else. Once you put it in one system, then it makes it available to others. When we talk about the predictions, here's what they look like. We call them multi-mode fire predictions. It's really what we're really just describing there is like in all things in science, there's different models, and those models have a different purpose. They have different benefits and weaknesses. Again, if you talk to the community resilience team, they'll discuss with you. Spark is our main tool. We've used it for a very long time, and for those that are very interested in how we've actually managed to do this and shrink the time of these predictions, please come and talk to us after, and we can talk about how it works in the cloud and spins up loads of versions of this and generates it in minutes. But it has down to the point where it is generating those initial predictions in minutes. And there's still a very strong group of fire behaviour analysts that look at that, make sure it's right. Computers are not saying it's going to produce the best output. It's not the smartest. It's not the best. But you have got people that look at that and say, yeah, that's actually really good. Once they endorse that, immediately available in the common operating picture down to you, immediately distributed to a number of people. So everyone can just start to take action. You can move the slider along to say, well, where is it going to go 5 hours from now, 3 hours from now, 12 hours from now? And that can really help inform how you're planning. Gives you different information. It tells you things around, well, what's the probability? You can see there it's got this graduated colour scheme on the left-hand side there, burn probability. The darker, more likely, the lighter, less likely. And really that's just to say, well, now I've run the prediction lots and lots of times, and here's an average output of what you should be thinking about. Obviously, the lighter it is, maybe you're less concerned. The darker it is, the more likely that's going to occur. It's going to give you some indication of flame height, like how high the flame's going to be. That's going to inform your strategy. That might help people think about, well, how will we approach this? How many appliances? What should I be doing? And then ember density, obviously very key as well around what do we think is going to put us at risk in the wind. Common operating picture, as you can see there, many of you will have used this. We won't spend lots of time talking about this, but it has changed. It is now available. And it's actually being more modern. It lets us provide access to more stuff. We've released more updates of the common operating picture in the last 3 months than I think we had in the last 3 years. And feedback, again, is just really key. I'll never stress enough, and I really resonate with Simon's feedback. Feedback is the only way that we can make things better. We need people like you, active users and firefighters, to tell us this system needs to do this for me. I need that. I see gaps here and there. And it is my team's entire focus to deliver those things and work with a team like Simon and others to make sure we improve things for you. So I just put that there. Social intelligence is one of the other modules. And really what that is doing at the moment, and this will continue to grow, and if they're thinking about how do we connect it to hazards near me and other places, but there clearly is a theme in this world that a lot of people take photos of fires. It's just a thing. People get out their phone, they put it on social media. It's just something people are doing. Well, the system is connected to X at this point in time, and what it does is if it sees a photo and it uses machine learning and it tries to identify fire in photos, and it's constantly getting better at that. And when it sees fire, it'll pull that photo in. It'll place it on the map and say, hey, did you know there's a photo of a fire here? And you can say, yeah, I do know about that. It's related to the fire. That is helpful. Thanks very much. Or actually, maybe I'm seeing a photo of a fire in an area I knew nothing about. And that's the real intent there, is as people are taking photos, potentially in something where you've got lots of embers throwing or a fast-moving fire, people are going to be taking photos all over the place. It can flow into the application, and you might find that it's helping surface information that you weren't quite aware of. People do use social media. It's a massive thing now. And with the way that hazards near me is moving, where it's more accessible on more people's phones, well, they're going to start thinking about, well, we should let people take photos of fires as well and let people submit imagery there. Like crowdsourcing information from volunteers and from the public more broadly keeps people more informed. It's just an amazing tool that if you can actually start to filter the information and bring the useful information to you, well then, yes, the public become a great source to help keep us informed. Dynamic coverage is one of the other functions inside the tool. Really what this is trying to show is trying to give fire control centres and other users just information around, well, how covered is the area currently? Now, day to day, that's probably, all very green. Brigades are at their stations, life is good, but then as we move into higher events, and maybe they might be storm and tempest events like in Taree, or they might be large-scale bushfire events, you've got lots of people moving into strike teams, lots of people moving away, well, then it starts to become a bit more interesting to those people to go, well, what is my current coverage? Am I actually got the right number of fire appliances available? Or do I need to think about what arrangements do I need to put in place? What things do I need to be prepared for? And how do I make sure that I've just got the right things in place over the next few days or coming weeks? Aviation safety, we touched on this. So this is looking at the weather, looking at the fire, and then looking at a collection of information that we worked with industry, worked with experts in the field of aviation to determine, well, what are the values that we should be saying, look, it's a high risk to operate a 737 for bush firefighting operations. So it's actually contextualising and moving away from, well, is it safe to fly the aircraft? Well, actually at 30,000 feet it probably is entirely safe. We don't operate aircraft at 30,000 feet. We operate them much closer to the ground. So how do we make sure that we're providing people information in a very quick way to say, well, look, we think it's a low risk to use this type of aircraft, medium risk to do this, or high risk to do that. And it's not to say you wouldn't, deploy or operate things at a high risk. We have a whole section called the State Air Desk, and they're the experts that will look at the hows and whys, but this is about surfacing information as readily and as quickly as possible to everyone to go, right, here's the best thing that you could do, or here's the lowest risk choice you could make. And again, that's all about surfacing that decision support, moving people to being able to feel more confident in the decisions they're making and feeling more supported and less stuck at a point where they just feel like they've got paperwork in front of them and maybe they don't feel like they quite have it all together. Well, the system can help them fill those gaps. So where to with here from Athena? So again, there's lots of different things that we're working on. Risk modelling platform is one, and the community resilience team will talk all about that. What that is starting to think about how we digitise our fire predictions before the fire. So this helps inform things like bushfire risk management plans. It helps inform treatment plans, and very much talk to Melissa O'Halloran about that. That tool is in testing and going through a whole lot of work, and I do stress that you go and talk to them about that. They've got a whole lot to say. Satellite cameras and towers. So how do we actually integrate with different people's towers and cameras? Forestry have a number of cameras up in their networks now. Actually, people are publishing or providing access to cameras. A number of fire control centres or districts have got cameras up. Well, how do we actually start to pull all that information in and potentially review or ingest or interpret that footage to detect fires? Or simply automate the process that once we're confident that is a fire, well, maybe we actually should move that to CAD and work with operations on, are we confident enough now that we would send a fire truck? I think they're questions that we don't know the answers to, but this is work that we do with Simon's team. This is work we do with the operations team around, well, if we could get to the point where we're 80, 90% confident that camera is looking at a fire, well, would we be at the stage now where we'd actually say, well, let's go and dispatch a fire truck, because more likely than not, we're actually going to provide some benefit to the community. Athena is also moving into things around, how do we help people make more informed choices around dispatch? CAD, we have CAD now, and CAD's an amazing tool. It's very focused, though, on initial dispatch. It's what do you do from the time of report? CAD then doesn't help people a lot when you move into, well, what's happening for the second dispatch, the third dispatch, the fourth dispatch. That's starting to now operate with, your requests as a field IC coming through. It's the fire control centre trying to work it out. But we're working on, well, how do we support people through those decisions? And we're starting to look at a thing called the risk response engine. And what that's doing is that's actually ingesting all the information from CAD. It's looking at all the information from ICON, and it's been informed by a number of people that operate in the field to then produce what we'd call suggestions. So you could direct attack the fire and contain it to 10 hectares if you used this many appliances by this time. If you used 4 Cat 1s and 1 aircraft and this and that, and providing people the various different strategies informed by our own maths and logic to say, if you did these things, here's outcomes that you could achieve. We have trial there written very deliberately, because this is not something we're using actively in production, nor do we think is ready for that yet. But it's us trying to turn our minds to how do we more intelligently use all the information that we have at hand and all the experience that we have collectively as a fire service, and have something that's going to help people make these decisions, particularly when they're under duress. They're trying to do things quickly, they're trying to do it fast. Everyone's asking them, when do things need to happen? Well, we need a system that's going to be able to say, here are the 5 options that we think from all the things you've told me you could potentially undertake. And again, like we say, decision support. Someone is actually making that choice. So that's the thing. I'll take some questions at the end, actually, if that's okay. And we'll spend some time talking about VAN. So for a long time, connectivity has been a massive issue. I think everyone here, I've already talked to a number of people who are telling me about connectivity. One thing that I can tell you is, coming from the comm space, is connectivity is a shared problem across the entire state. I don't think there's one district in the state of New South Wales that doesn't have that area where you just absolutely get nothing. And that's better and worse than some other areas. So from about December last year, we've got our contracts together and we established this thing called VAN, and we'll touch on what VAN is. VAN is a nothing statement. It stands for Vehicle as a Node, which creatively doesn't really stand for much, but what it stands for is it's a satellite and a modem inside the fire appliance. It puts Wi-Fi around the truck, and we'll talk about what that means. We'll talk about how, right now, we figured out, well, how do we start to work out where does this capability need to go? As we've said, everyone has connectivity problems. It's such a significant thing. The big press on us is how do we get this out there quickly and how do we do this reliably? Well, one of the ways we started to think about it was, well, how do we start to prioritise and determine where connectivity is terrible? Many of you and any of you can go to COP today and you'll see that we've added a layer that actually helps us work this out. And this is not to say it's the definitive way, but it's a two-way conversation of how we work it out. So we've got the Optus, Telstra and TPG coverage maps now in the common operating picture. We've layered all the different suburbs and districts over the top and we've processed them to work out what you can see there. So we can see that Optus, in that particular space of Patterson suburb, Optus covers 84% of the landmass. Telstra covers 100%. TPG covers 29% of the landmass. We've actually worked out how many properties it covers inside that suburb. And really that's there just to help you understand, at the click of a button now, what does the profile of any one coverage look like in any one space? And then when we meet with districts, we talk to them around, well, actually, what does that mean for you? Where are your high-risk operational areas? What does it mean from the coverage inside the space? And then we've landed on what we'd call a priority model. Now, when we did MDT, we did a model that we call district by district rollout. We started at District 1, we went to District 2, 3, 4, 5, and that made sense for MDT because it was about the mass. It was about having critical mass in a space. Everyone had to have it, so that way no one, like second appliances, weren't missing information or they couldn't see what the first arriving had put in the MDT. We had to be careful not to strip people of information in MDT. But in VAN, that's not necessarily the case. VAN, we're trying to say, well, actually, we want the worst affected people to have connectivity as fast as possible, and then we'll continue to roll it out across the state. So it actually leaves it open for us to do a priority model, and using things like that, the common operating picture, working with districts and areas, we've landed on a list of things that are priority, and that's helping us roll out. The other thing we had to think about is how do we install this quickly? Like, we don't want to spend a lot of time screwing into appliances. We need to minimise how much time we spend installing it in the truck. We need to think about how do we make that impact the brigade the least amount possible. I actually have spent a lot of my career taking up space in your trucks. I've been putting radios in, I've been putting MDTs in, and we're forever stealing space out of the appliance to put things in. So how do we think about how we try and minimise that? Do we need to do that this time around? How can we think about this better? How do we make it supportable when it breaks? How do we just come and take it out and put a new one in and let you spend less time waiting for us and we spend more time just solving the problem? And that's where we've landed on a solution like this. There's two solutions. One is how you install it inside the appliance, and that's in the group vehicle out the back. You can go and have a look. And then we've got the all-in-one, which is actually on the Cat 7. So this is our view of how we're going to approach installing on heavy vehicles. Everything is inside the box. The only thing that comes outside that box and goes inside the appliance is the Ethernet to connect to the radios and the power to connect to the battery. Outside of that, it's all in there. So we think about that from an installation time, it's much shorter. We think about that from a support perspective for yourselves as brigades. We arrive, we put it on, power, Ethernet, thanks very much, see you later. You have it broken, we show up, take the power, take the Ethernet out, put a new one on, we take the broken one back. We're not taking your appliance offline for several days while we try and figure out a problem or think about it or fix it or otherwise. It makes it easy for us to integrate that into fleet production. One thing that we didn't do soon enough in the MDT program, and I'll happily acknowledge it, everyone, is we didn't partner with fleet production soon enough. We had people we retrofitted to your truck, you had the MDT, thanks very much, your new truck arrived 2 months later, oh, where's the MDT bracket? Oh, sorry, we don't put those in new trucks yet. And that was just a friction, and we'll acknowledge it. I'm not saying we did fast enough. We're in the VAN program, we've done it the opposite way around. Talk with fleet production team, we're side by side, working in lockstep. Vehicles rolling out now, roll out with a van installed from day one. And then we'll start retrofitting. So now, hopefully, we'll miss all that friction focus. And on that point, you can see here, this is the first step that we've done. While we're working out and planning how we roll it out and where do we go, what do we do in the meantime? Well, we spend the time working with fleet production, and there's 117 Category 16 vehicles rolling out of fleet production and being ready for delivery, and they're constantly rolling in. So our team are focused on, well, let's get them all outfit and ready to go. There's a couple of benefits to that. One, we've got a team of installers, and we'll touch on that. They're RFS people, hired with RFS uniform and RFS cars to drive around and install as close, like in your brigade stations or convenient locations, whatever's negotiated, but it definitely will not be drive hours and hours to the fire control centre. We're moved away from that model, and we know that's frustrating. We know that consumes people's time. So working together on these vehicles lets us build a culture in the team. They understand how to work together. They understand how to install it. It actually just makes common sense too. These vehicles won't get delivered without the capability. They're immediately rolling out. Some of the drivers to that are where they get distributed, and don't hold us to the numbers, but this is the maths we did on all those vehicles. So you can see that actually they end up pretty much in every area of the state, in different volumes, but they do end up in every area. And what a Category 16 will be very good for in the van space is, while it acts as that little hub, it can move around. It's not the first arriving appliance, we acknowledge that, but it can be deployed to any particular fire at any particular time. They're four-wheel drive, they're mobile, they're agile, they can get there and they can provide some assistance very quickly. And we'll be focusing on Category 16s for a little while yet. You might be asking, like, when are we going to get it? And it's actually a super fair question. So we're spending all our time with these 17 at the moment. We're working with districts. Where are the priorities? Where do we need to be? But we're out there and we're installing. In between now and June, we've been spending a lot of time working with everyone, using these priorities that we've been fed around, like how do we make sure we get an equitable distribution? So we get some in southwest, we get some in southeast, we get some in northeast, we get some in the west, we get some in Sydney, and we spread them out as best we can in the lead up to the fire season, so we're not penalising anyone. So there's capability across the state. It may not be as much as we want, but we're spreading it out as fast as we can to provide the greatest benefit to all. Then we'll get our formalised rollout schedule, and then the team will get to work. But at the moment, this is what it looks like between now and June, and we'll be somewhere in the order of 210 units, 230 units by June. And we'll be focusing on getting as many out as we can before fire season, because that's absolutely our objective at the moment. We've already seen these used a number of times. We'll touch on how it's been used. There's a couple of good use cases we've heard, but even recently in the recent floods, we've been deploying StarLinks as deployable boxes. We've deployed them to base camps with logistics. We've deployed them to SES units. We've sent them everywhere, and these things do actually provide material benefit to anyone that has used them. What does it actually give you? I've rattled on around a lot about how it's getting there, but what does it actually do? Well, it does put Wi-Fi around the appliance, and what the Wi-Fi will do for you is it's going to put out 4 Wi-Fis today. It's going to put out one called interoperability. That lets other agencies use it. That lets them get out their portable radios. Their radios will jump on the truck, and their radios will use Smart Connect, and Smart Connect just makes your PSN radio work when you're outside of coverage. Their radios can immediately drift on that and then just start working. We've got RFS Crew. RFS Crew is actually for you to connect to. You can connect your personal device. You can use FireMapper, you can use Activ, and there'll be a few people wondering, yes, you absolutely can use Netflix. We're not going to stop you using things that you would like to use. We've all been there, rush, go and do property protection, wait till the fire approaches. You're sitting there for a good 2 to 3 hours wondering what you're doing with your life, because now you're sitting there and you're cold and you're hungry. Well, it doesn't solve everything, but yes, if there's a bit of quality of life for you to watch Netflix, call home, take photos, do whatever it is you want to do within reason, we will provide you access. And yes, if somebody figures out how to do something wrong on there, we will be monitoring, and once we know, you'll get an email, don't worry. The game is it'll have to work together. You guys treat it right, we'll try and keep it as open as possible as long as you guys keep trying to do the right thing. There'll be restrictions, but we'll try and keep them as lightweight as possible. RFS systems, well, that's for us. We've got to connect MDT to it, we've got to connect radios to it, we've got to connect all our little systems to it, and we've got to keep them secure. We have a whole ICT security team that chase me around every day of the week until we need to do things safely, so that's where our stuff will go and keep things nice and safe. The biggest one is community Wi-Fi. That's actually something that's very different. I can't actually even stress how groundbreaking this is in some ways. No other emergency service at the moment offers this capability. I cannot stress enough. It will be the ability for you, as the OIC of your appliance, to enable free Wi-Fi around your appliance for anyone to connect to. So often, in many events, and we see it as comms, we tend to be the first appliance on scene. Something has gone wrong, comms is down, floods have occurred, we've responded, and you have a group of people that are just trying to remain informed or connected in some way, shape or form. And that remains the case for multiple days. In 2019, there were lots and lots of cases of this. Well, now in your appliance, you simply go to your MDT and you'll say, turn on community Wi-Fi, and you can provide free access for people to jump on. You don't have to share passwords, you don't have to tell them, you don't have to even put your truck's data at risk. You just simply jump on, they'll connect, they can ring home, they can get on Hazard's EME, they can do what they need to do, and really the opportunities on how to use that are exponential. FCCs could take a spare PC, send it down to the little refuge area and just leave it on and let people use it. That's a very significant change. I can't stress enough some of the ways that this satellite, our negotiations with StarLink have worked, and we won't talk contractuals here, but one of the things that I'm just amazed, I'd never thought in my life I would sit in front of a group of people and say we actually prefer the use of satellite data because it's cheaper than Telstra. Think about that. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Never in our life. We have unlimited priority data. It doesn't matter how much you use every day of the week on our Starlinks. It absolutely matters not. We still don't even have those arrangements with Telstra. So that's such a significant thing. And it lets us do meaningful things like community Wi-Fi. If we had to worry about our data, we'd have to worry about how we make that cost effective. Well, on this case, we're not having to worry about that at all. We'll talk about a couple of use cases. We've been installing this for some time. We went out to a few brigades and installed this as a trial, and we'll talk about some of the use cases we've heard. And this is just to give you some context to some of the good things that we've already heard from this today. One of the brigades, which is Wiseman's Ferry Brigade, it's in the Hills District. In the Spencer area along the Hawkesbury River, they have terrible coverage. They're in Sydney, but around that area, PSN is very patchy, telephone coverage is very terrible. And they just simply can't communicate very often. So in this case, they had a truck rollover. For context, I don't actually know if that is a truck rollover. I just Googled truck rollover. But they had a truck rollover. It was a heavy vehicle, so it looked something like that. That felt about right. But the brigade arrived first on scene. Heavy truck had rollen over. No PSN coverage. So we'll walk through how this worked before if they didn't have StarLink on. They had no radio coverage. So ultimately, they're on their own. They had no phone coverage. Tow truck driver had found their way to it. Tow truck was too small for the size of the vehicle, and he got the tow truck driver there not able to contact anyone and really talk to anyone. The only way they were going to deal with that was the brigade stayed around the appliance and kept the traffic safe while everyone drove off, went and found coverage and did what they needed to do, and then came back, and then the truck would have to drive off, go find coverage so they could tell Firecom they haven't fallen off a cliff, and then come back, and then there'd be this constant back and forth of how do they actually do that. Well, we take about the use case when they had StarLink on their appliance. The radio just worked. They just Firecom on scene. Tow truck driver arrived. Oh, no phone coverage, mate. Jump on the StarLink and just call your organisation. Call his company. I need a bigger truck. Tow truck driver stressing he's not going to get home on time, mate. Just jump on the StarLink, call your wife, and tell you you're going to be late. And while they're all a bunch of very small things, for me, particularly as a captain of my own brigade, it's such a significant change that within absolutely no intervention, not knowing how to use it, no pushing buttons, no complex stuff, it just simply provided benefit immediately to people's lives, just made things a little bit easier. Didn't take away the firefighting, didn't take away the risk, but what it did take away was radio just worked, people just did what they needed, and we just went home as quickly as possible. We use another example of Menindee. Menindee is a rescue brigade out in Western New South Wales, and just to help visualising what that looks like, the blue little circle I've drawn there, and I'm terrible at maps, if the rollout thing didn't give you any indication, that's the size of the PSN coverage, which pretty much covers the township and just a bit around it. Covers exactly 28,000. I won't try and read the number. But most of their incidents actually happen outside the town, so they move outside that PSN coverage very reliably. The Telstra coverage is effectively there, but kind of not there. I've learned a lot about how they even coordinate ambulance and all sorts of stuff by talking to the brigade out there, and it is just complex. There's no calling ambulance, an ambulance just arrived. There's local health districts that coordinate with rural firing doctors, that coordinate with the local nurses, that work with the vehicles on the ground. And there's all this local coordination to make sure they get the right response, but they're doing that in a space where there's no PSN, no telephone, no nothing. They've got people, again, moving back and forth and doing huge things inside an actual person's trapped incident with someone in the car, and they can't just disappear to go find coverage. Well, having the solution on there's been two really interesting use cases. One, they've provided the Wi-Fi to the entire local health district so they can just jump on whenever they arrive. So the process I've heard is they arrive to the vehicle when the vehicle's dealing with the incident. The local health nurses will then coordinate with the hospital around triage, prioritising, airlift, all these other things. Well, before when they did that, they had to get a satellite phone out. Has anyone talked on a satellite phone before? Are they easy to use? Anybody really know when you're talking to each other? No, you don't. You say, oh, what? No, sorry, you go. No, I'll go. And you try and do that in a stressful scenario, it doesn't work very well. Well, now they're just using StarLink Wi-Fi calling straight back, and it just works. There was an incident where the telegraph pole or some sort of power infrastructure failed the other week. The entire township lost power. Well, the brigade, of their own decision, because they are part of the community, rolled the truck out, went parked it at the health district and said, right, we're just going to leave this running all day, connect all your phones and just coordinate with the Royal Flying Doctors. And they did that in minutes. I can tell you that while we have loads and loads of strategic capabilities to deploy Wi-Fi anywhere you need it, we are never going to be 29 minutes away. Literally in minutes they were able to provide that assistance, and that's just such a dramatic change. And I suppose that's the thing that I see is just such a game-changing capability in this space. StarLink is nothing new, modems in trucks is nothing new, but bringing this all together and getting it rolled out to the scale that we've been supported by government and by the RFS to roll it out is just going to be such a fundamental change in how we do things. 100 meg to the truck, I mean, even to be fair, so the speed that goes into the fire appliance that we drove here is faster than the internet I get at home. Thank you. Any questions?
We've got the microphones coming out, so we've got one over there. I want to make sure that anybody over here gets seen. We'll get one to the gentleman with the hat on the aisle as well, but we'll start over here.
Matthew,
Thanks.
are the maps hard-coded or live? You mentioned coverage maps of Telstra, TPG. Yep. Are those hard-coded maps? Because there are over several hundred mobile towers and sites disabled at any one time.
Yeah. That's a really good question. So in the maps that we have now, they're the ones that they produce. So they're the live maps of what the coverage looks like, assuming everything works. Now, what we're working on is when we think about like through next gen technology, but now we go and put a modem. I put a modem in every single fire truck, and the fire truck's moving around. Well, I actually now know what the live coverage is. So we're going to trial. I'm not promising this will be a thing, but what we're trialing to do is, well, if I can actually start to pull the live Telstra coverage out of the truck, can I actually visualise that in the common operating picture so people can see what the current network's doing at any one point in time as we move more and more vehicles around in a large incident? So they're the types of things that once we have the capability in, that's the type of world where we can start to look to now of like, well, how do we actually use this information more intelligently and actually provide that back to you? Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, there is one down here.
G'day. Just a quickie. You're using Phoenix as your predictor?
As the modelling tool? Yeah, it's Phoenix, yeah.
Some of the early models of Phoenix and ignition points and all that stuff is very, very wrong. Are you ground truthing?
That's something I talk to community resilience about. But yes, there's a whole world of like doing the prediction, people validating that prediction. Fire behaviour analysts, this hasn't gone past fire behaviour analysts. They do look at these things, and they're forever tuning the value. Simon Heemster and team do a massive amount of work in that space. So not trying to say don't talk to me about it. I just won't do the answer justice. Melissa O'Halloran and team, they would absolutely talk your ear off about this. They do spend a lot of time refining that and making sure that that's accurate as it can be.
Let's have a look. We've got one over there. And do we have any more? Is that a hand in the middle? If we can get a microphone to the gentleman in the middle over there. Thanks.
You talk about people having problems with connectivity on the PSN. What about people who are still connected with PMR and haven't even been upgraded to PSN?
Yeah, fair. So the way the PMR works, we can't really provide that sort of the same way that we're going to fix that. It uses a thing called Smart Connect, which connects your radio to the internet to get back to the PSN. So unfortunately, that won't help in the PMR space. But just to ground, we're probably somewhere all the way through to the next couple of years. 2027 is when we expect the PSN to be complete. So between now and then, you would be on the PSN. It's just that uncomfortable moment while we're still trying to make our way to the PSN in full. So yes, in truth, it won't help in the PMR space. Wi-Fi calling, all those other things will, but no, we can't connect your radio to the internet through PMR, unfortunately. Sorry for that.
Right ahead. There. Just while we're hold on one sec. We've also got. It looks like the person who is the furthest away in the whole room. If we can, it's okay. We'll get a microphone to you, but we'll take this question first, then we'll go up there. Thanks.
With your social media feeds, you're talking about it's going through X. Are you still looking at branching that off into your Facebook, Instagram, the other apps that actually probably get used more for photo sharing?
Yeah.
Because I think X is probably one of the least.
No, fantastic point. And the answer is yes. I think really what we've been trying to work through is, I think there was always a plan to get into Facebook and other things. I think after all the US look into these things, there's been loads of changes in how they do that and how that works. So we've been a bit slow with understanding the new ways that they want people to connect to all that stuff. But absolutely, yeah. Looking at TikTok, looking at things like Facebook, all these other sources are generally more than X. Twitter was the first place, and we're continuing to look at that. And like I say, hazards near me is even on the list as a tool that people actually are starting to use more and more regularly as well. So it's a really important point you make, that we need to connect to more to really get the most out of that.
Yeah, a couple of things. With respect to the PSN thing, is there some way of getting a simple walk around, different phone number or something like that? Because a lot of the PSN areas, the PMR areas, really have lousy connections. So it's quite important to those people to, if there was some simple way we could, even if it wasn't very effective but reasonably reliable, that we could get around that, because the PMR is much more of a problem than the PSN.
Yep.
The other question I had is, we currently have fires near me or that sort of thing. There's a guy has done a working version of an app where there'd be a little button in the right hand corner, report a fire, take a photo, and you guys would get it straight back. And you get a few thousand versions of the same fire, and that might be useful information.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And yes, I completely agree with your point. Happy to talk offline about how that would all work with phone numbers and stuff. But yeah, from your point around like reporting a fire and sending it in, I think there's huge value in that type of technology as long as we look at it. But yeah.
There we go. Sorry. Just in terms of the Athena machine learning, I'm wondering, are you feeding in decisions and then outcomes after an event as well to kind of support that model?
So I think there's a whole lot of work in that space. So we talk about the risk response engine. That might be the thing that's probably most benefited by that. So we talk about fire prediction. Fire prediction is not driven by decisions. Risk response engine that we're trialling is. And I think there's a load of work for us to work through. Like, what does it mean to educate that in a certain way? That's part of the trial. Like, how big would the data model need to be? How much information does it need? How many iterations of decisions does it need before that machine even becomes effective? Machine learning and AI being the broader term, we're talking millions of transactions generally to train a model to do anything meaningful. And really, we're just dipping our toe in this space. So yes, to your point, yes, we'd love to work out, look, how do we get it to feedback some of the decisions that we're taking? Some of that's around also result. So it needs to know, like, well, you made this choice and this occurred, and that needs to be definitive. So I think there's a lot of exploration across the whole RFS in that space, not just in the technology world. That's fire scientists and other things. So there's a lot for us to do, to your point. I could bore you to tears, but I won't. But yeah, your question is very valid. And yes, we are trying to think about that, but some of this is around, like, how do we even understand suppression? If I was to do this, what's the likely suppression model? And some of those things are being worked on. And again, Melissa O'Halloran is an expert in this space and she'll show you all about it. But yeah, it's a very interesting piece, and it'll take us some time, I think, before that's mature enough that we'll use it, but it's definitely something we're starting to look at.